stunning turn of events, it looks like Google might be licensing the Gemini AI for Apple, for their iPhones and to power iOS. And that's actually a really interesting thing because, I mean, they don't do it for all their own Google phones. But anyway, so Gemini is their whole smart AI thing. It's like their competitor for ChatGPT and Bard. Well, it used to be Bard and, Grok and all that stuff. So we've got all these AI models out there, all these different AI things now. And one of the things that's been absent in the smartphone conversation when it comes to AI is Apple. I mean, we've got Google, we've got Samsung, we've got a bunch of different Android stuff that can run AI, but we really haven't had that conversation when it comes to Apple. So if you've got an iPhone and you're like, man, Samsung's getting these cool AI things, they're getting Circle to Search, and they're getting Interpreter, and they're getting all these other cool things, and Google's got all this stuff, but the iPhone's, well, largely silent. And we know that the A-series chipsets on the iPhone is very powerful. They got the neural core, very, very capable of running AI, very capable of handling computational photography, computational everything, AI, machine learning, all that stuff. And if they're going to buy into this, that gives a lot of weight behind Gemini, and it's actually a big thumbs up to Google. And we've seen things like this in the past. I mean, shoot, Apple licensed Google Maps for a long time. There's been different relationships between Apple and Google in the past. So this would be an interesting proposition to see how things pan out, because it seems like Google's trying to put themselves out there as being the mainstay for AI conversation when it comes to smartphones in particular. And, well, I mean, we've experienced a lot of this whenever it comes to our Pixel phones, right? I mean, you've got the Gemini app now that replaced Bard. You can do all that cool stuff in there. And if you haven't done so, really, you should go out there and download the Gemini AI app. Now, this is different. Like, it's different from the conversation we've had with the Gemini Nano AI model that doesn't run on the Pixel phone because of the hardware limitations. We're talking about Gemini AI like as a whole, and the Gemini stuff that goes along with it. It's the backbone for quite a few things, and maybe it does encompass the Gemini Nano model for the phones. It would be interesting, and I think it would be a little bit of a slap in the face because a lot of Google Pixel phones can't run it. And the frustrating part of this conversation, we've been talking about it for the last week. When you take a look at the Pixel phones and you take a look at what they've been doing with the Tensor chip, the Tensor chip is supposed to be able to run all this stuff. It's supposed to be custom designed to take advantage of and exploit Google's AI prowess. I mean, Google's been at the forefront of AI conversation in smartphones for a really, really, really long time. So it makes sense. It makes sense that Apple, instead of trying to build all this stuff from scratch, would want to invest in that, bring it over and put it on their own phones. And that would make them very competitive in a lot of ways. And it's interesting when you look at these different conversations, though, because Google has traditionally been very limited with their Pixel phones. I mean, a lot of Pixel features don't even work outside of the US. And then we've already got all the Samsung AI stuff, which is basically just different Google AI functions that are renamed. So it would be very interesting to see this happen. And of course, it'll mean more money. I mean, I'm sure Apple will pay tons and tons of millions of dollars to acquire this feature and not have to build it from scratch. And that kind of gives them like a leg up. It gives them some extra nitro. It gives them a nitro boost in their car to push themselves out in front and catch up with a lot of the competition, because really we haven't seen this. And when you take a look at Apple, there's been no discussion about it. So I thought maybe AI and Apple, I just thought they were like, well, it's a catchphrase. It's not that important. We're not doing a whole lot with it. So it's an interesting roadmap look when you say, okay, well, if Apple is going to buy into this, then maybe there's something really good there. And they want to bring it onto their platform. They've seen the success. They've seen the extra sales. If you take a look at the Samsung phone sales, especially like the S24 Plus, in particular, massive extra sales this year. And Samsung themselves said they thought that having the AI features was like an extra boost to their sales for the S24 across the board. So that'd be very interesting. So we'll keep an eye on this. And I think it's going to make things a little bit interesting, especially in the Google department, because I've said this for a while. I first used to say there was two reasons to get a Pixel phone. One was for the software and the updates, and two was for the camera, and three now for the AI. I mean, they advertise themselves as the smartest smartphone. Everybody refers to the Pixel 8 Pro as the smartest smartphone, and AI on smartphones, the first smartphone with AI. And then we see Samsung get it, and then it looks like Apple's going to get it. I'm sure it'll get released later on this year whenever we get the new iPhone 16 series. And of course, they'll put that on other phones, I'm sure, as well. So where does Google go from here with the Pixel phones? That's the question, because if you look at Apple, they've got the largest market share in the US, and they're quickly challenging the global market share because they've been making headway there as well. So when you take a look at AI and you take a look at Google's Gemini AI, and if it's going to be on the iPhone and it's going to be on Samsung phones, what's the reason to buy this phone? It kind of takes away that third reason, because if you can get it on the other phones, people are probably more likely to buy an iPhone. Like, people are more likely to buy an iPhone here in the United States anyway. They have the largest market share. They sell, tons and tons, like 70, 80 million phones a year here in the US. Google sells a few million. So maybe Google is saying, okay, like, we know we can't sell on this level, so instead of making this a unique selling point to our phones, we'll mass market it and let the other guys who have the major market share buy it, and that'll help funnel and put some more money into our pocketbook so that we can continue to develop them and use the Google Pixel phone as the test bed for it. The only problem and the glaring issue I see here is if they're not going to support it properly on their own platform. And we're already seeing this. We've seen it with the Pixel Fold. It's not getting a lot of the smart stuff. We're looking at the Pixel 8. It's not getting a lot of the smart stuff. And then if you start seeing it pop up on the Samsung phones, it's already on the S24 series phones. The S23 phones are probably going to get a lot of them soon. And then if you look at the future of the iPhone, I'm sure they'll backdate it as well. I'm sure the iPhone 15 will get it. Probably the iPhone 14. The iPhone 16 is going to get it. And then we see Google and how they're handling their own hardware department. It just kind of makes you scratch your head. And I know there's money involved here, and I'm sure it's probably more money than they even make off of their smartphone division. So I want to see Google use some of this money, use some of this infusion, use some of this notoriety. Like, if they can get Gemini AI on the iPhone, they can say we're powering the greatest and the largest group of AI on smartphones, and then give us some real reasons, and of course support their own hardware on their phones better. Because the whole thing here with the Tensor chip, and I've talked about this, it's supposed to be geared towards running Google's AI, and it clearly isn't doing that very well in a lot of areas. But if you see that you can do it with the A series chip, if you see that you can do it with the Snapdragon chip, what is the point of the Tensor chip if it can't run everything as well as the other phones? Just put a Snapdragon chip in there. And I'm sure a lot more people would be interested in it. I would be much more interested in buying a Pixel phone that has a Snapdragon, and I know we're supposed to move to TSMC, so Samsung is the one that's making the Tensor chip right now. So basically, Samsung makes chips, and they make the Exynos chip, they make the Tensor chip, they make a lot of hardware. There's so many different Samsung components in different phones. Like, Samsung's got a lock on a lot of the stuff, but Samsung isn't always known for making the highest quality chips. For instance, they've been a partner with Qualcomm for years where they would make a certain amount of batch of the Snapdragon series chips. So it's funny because everyone's like, oh, the Tensor chip, it's an Exynos, but they don't call the Snapdragon chip that Samsung made an Exynos. They have their own foundry, they make their own chips, and they make chips for other people. So I don't necessarily think, and I've said this, that a Tensor chip is an Exynos chip. It's a custom designed one. I mean, it's got an extra core in there. It's got the Tensor unit, all that stuff. So it very much is a custom series chip. But I think there's going to be a lot more faith and confidence when they move to TSMC, who Qualcomm partners with, who historically makes much, much better chips with better tolerances, higher yield rates, and all that stuff. So it'll be interesting to see where we go with this. If it actually does happen, I think it will give a boost to a lot of the credit that Google has, especially whenever it comes to the Gemini AI stuff that's going on. But then it just makes me think different things about the Pixel phones and what the implications are for the Pixel phone line as we move forward. Because again, like I said, there are 3 reasons right now to buy a Google phone. This is the stock Android and update experience, the camera, and AI. But AI is quickly dwindling as, I think, a selling point for the Google Pixel phones because they're giving it to everybody else. So, it's like a catch-22. Like, they're screwed if they do and they're screwed if they don't. Like, I agree with them. I think it's fine to make all that money and to do these partnerships, but they need to get like global support for these AI features on their Pixel phones. They need to quit locking a lot of them down to the US. They need to move over to TSMC. I wish they'd move back to a Snapdragon chip. And they need to save some of them. Like, don't give away all the crown jewels. Like, save a few for yourself so that way you can have some exciting reasons to have a Pixel phone, other than, of course, the temperature sensor. I know everybody's excited about that. So anyway, I saw that. I thought it was interesting. I wanted to talk about it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. We can go over this. But, I mean, I think it is a serious nod to let people know that people like Apple, Samsung, and users and the fan base is taking AI seriously. But how seriously is Google taking it in their own platform as opposed to other phones. That's the thing. They marketed and positioned themselves as having the smartest smartphone with the best AI and this special tensor chip that can do all these AI things. So you're like, okay, that means maybe these other phones can't do it. And then you find out the other phones can do it, and a lot of Google's phones can't do it. So anyway, that's all I got. If you have any questions or comments, please, of course, go to the comment section. I'll do my best to get back with you. If you enjoyed the video, if you found this helpful, if you like the Google conversation stuff, you're in the right place. Hit the like and the subscribe button and little notification bell if you want updates when new videos come out. And as always, thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next time.